Now, the Law Commission last week delivered its report, La Tangata, a review of the protections in the Human Rights Act 1993 for people who are transgender, people who are non-binary, and those with innate variations of sex characteristics. The report recommends inserting gender identity as a new ground of discrimination under Section 21 of the Human Rights Act and amending other provisions that currently provide essential sex-based protections for women and girls. Speak Up for Women spokesperson Suzanne Levy says those recommendations represent an alarming departure from decades of progress in women's rights. And it's my pleasure to welcome her to the show. Suzanne, good to see you again.
Oh, thanks, Leah. It's lovely to be here.
Now, let's start at the beginning. Why did the Law Commission do this report in the first place?
I think they were asked to do the recommendation by Kerry Allen several years ago, or a couple of years ago. So it was asked, requested by, she was the then Justice Minister. So
That's right.
that's often how these things come about. So
Yeah.
this report will be presented, or will have already been presented, to Paul Goldsmith, who's the current Justice Minister.
Right. Yes.
So
Well,
that's why we have it.
That's why we've got it. Yeah. And they say that this is they being the Commission, say that it is a culmination of over 2 years of in-depth research, analysis, and public consultation. Do you agree? You've said it's nothing but short of a betrayal.
It is a betrayal. And I mean, I guess you can, how do you define consultation? Is it a valid consultation? The panel of experts didn't include any women's rights or gender critical voices. So they did consult with us. We had a hui with them and met for sort of half a day and went over some concerns. It was Speak Up for Women and some other sort of more like-minded gender critical groups. And that seemed to be, taken well. We were given a chance to say, to voice our concerns. And we were obviously all given a chance to put in very comprehensive submissions as well, which we all did. So the information was definitely given to them. But I think when if you look at the original recommendation, not the recommendation, there was a recommendations paper that was put out sort of June last year, I think. And the consultation and the submissions that we did was based on those recommendations that are already kind of thought about.
Right.
So there was definitely a foregone conclusion there, so we were already battling against what you could see they were wanting to do. But we all did it. We did some great submissions. And Speak Up for Women, we're really proud of what we put in, and I know the other groups are as well. But they have just fallen on completely deaf ears.
So what do you think they want to do, Suzanne? Because the Commission says they want to provide, in their words, clearer protection to people who are transgender or non-binary or intersex. But you don't agree that that is their aim, is it?
Well, I think what disappoints me is that it is possible to do both of those things. You could continue to protect the characteristic of sex in the Human Rights Act in the same way it's always been protected, whilst potentially adding some particular mention and protection for categories that include people who might be transgender. Now, in our submission, we didn't rule out adding another characteristic to the Human Rights Act. But we were kind of hesitant because it's a very difficult thing to define. You need to be able to objectively say, this is the characteristic and this is how you define it, and these are the people who it includes. So the characteristics that they're proposing and that they've, that feature in the report, I think I'll just get it in front of me, but it's the main recommendation that they say is to add 2 prohibited grounds of discrimination. So at the moment we have 13, and they're things like sex, marital status, religion, family status, race, those sorts of things, obvious kind of things, sexuality. So they are the grounds that you're not allowed to discriminate on.
Yep.
It's probably worth going back slightly to look at the Human Rights Act and what it actually does just before I go forward again, because it pretty much leaves us alone in our private lives. But what it does is it says in public life, so if you're providing goods and services to the public, you can't discriminate on these grounds. So you can't have a sign up on your shop that says no gays and no Asians. You can't do that. You can actually, because of the way the Act works, you could have a sign up that said no tall people, because height is not a.
I'll be right. They'll let me in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be okay. As much as I like to think I'm tall, I'm not. So it does. You are restricted in law to those 13 particular characteristics, which is kind of strange, but it's just the way the law works. And obviously, it'd be a bit odd if you did put a sign up saying that you didn't let tall people in, and you'd have to deal with that in other ways, but not under the Human Rights Act. So anyway, we have these. We have the law that says you can't discriminate on these grounds. And then it goes to list the times when you are allowed to discriminate. So they're called exceptions, and there are several of them. And they're things like insurance companies are allowed to discriminate on the basis of sex when they're offering things like life insurance, because there is evidence of different outcomes. Women live longer.
Yes.
Those sorts of things. Travel companies are allowed to discriminate on the basis of age. So you're allowed to run things like Kontiki tours that allow for under 35s, and people providing changing spaces and areas where women are vulnerable, where dignity and privacy and things like that are at risk. They are allowed to provide single-sex spaces. They are allowed to discriminate on the basis of sex. So a lot of the stuff it's pretty much common sense, and it's the stuff that says you can have women's changing spaces, women's accommodation. If you need to go for counselling, say to a rape crisis service or something like that, then you can say you want a female counsellor.
Right.
So there's a lot of quite specific but very sensible guidance in there.
Yes.
And it has generally worked really well, alongside the fact that people have a lot of common sense generally, and there is a social contract that says that a man in a woman's space is something you can question. So between the two of those things, we have muddled along reasonably well up until the last few years.
Right.
So what the Law Commission have done in adding these extra characteristics, so which I'll tell you what they are.
Yep.
It's actually two. First one is it's I'm going to read it out, but I don't understand it, and I think it's nonsense. Just as a qualifier, okay. Gender identity or its equivalence in the cultures of the person. There you go.
All right.
Which we suggest should be defined to include gender expression. Now, gender identity or its equivalence in the cultures of the person. So I suppose it's saying a different terminology for different cultures.
Yeah, so Samoans or Islanders have whawhawhinis. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yes, but I don't know whether that would be referred to as a gender identity. It's something else anyway. And they would like it defined to include gender expression. And the second thing is having an innate variation of sex characteristics, which I think is supposed to cover intersex or differences of sexual development. So when we did our submission, we looked at how you could create a category, a protected category that was somehow definable. So you could say this person is within that category. They fit this description, and we can say that the reason they've been discriminated is to do with this. So people who are non-binary, it's very difficult to know how you would define what they are? Like, how would you say in a discrimination
How?
situation that they were
Because they
discriminated
they
against
don't
because they're
they can't
non-binary?
just they can't describe what they are.